The day my daughter tried to prove I was crazy, I ironed my shirt with the same crease I used before deployment, and wrote the date November 18th, 2025 on the inside cuff. The hiss of steam rose up, carrying that sharp metallic scent of hot water and fabric. It wasn't paranoia, it was muscle memory, habit, proof that I was still in command of myself. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. The proof mattered because that morning, folded inside my mailbox, was a cream-colored envelope from a clinic I didn't recognize. Inside was a bill, $2,800 for comprehensive psychological evaluation and therapy, billed to Michael Hale. My name, my address, my so-called treatment. I hadn't booked an evaluation. Emily, my only daughter, had. She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her realtor blazer, clutching her tablet like a shield. "Dad, you said been slipping," she said. "You missed the HOA email about the gutter cleaning, and Mrs. Carver told me you mixed up your blood pressure meds with your vitamins." Her voice was polished, rehearsed, realtor smooth. I set the bill on the counter. "So you forged my signature to book me a shrink." Her lips pressed thin. "You need this. You sip, not yourself anymore." I'd heard those words before. The army shrinks used to circle them in red. Not fit, not ready, not himself. But the cruelest twist? The therapist Emily had chosen was Dr. Malcolm Rhodes, my old army psychologist. The same man who once held my combat clearance in his hands. The man who decided if I lived with my unit or stayed home branded unfit. The betrayal cut two ways. My daughter doubted me, and she'd chosen the one man who had already judged me once. I wanted to throw her tablet through the window, but discipline kept me still. Instead, I opened my palm and tapped the bill. $2,800, Emily. You think I don't know numbers? I ran supply lines across Kandahar. She didn't flinch. "Insurance will cover it. You shall thank me later." Then as she picked up her bag, she turned back with eyes flat as glass and said, "Dad, the sooner you admit you can handle things, the easier this will be for everyone." That line didn't just sting, it gutted me. My daughter, the one I raised after burying her mother, was rehearsing me out of my own life. She left before dark, leaving the bill like a scar on my counter. That night, as the November chill crept into Richmond, I pulled on my jacket and stepped out to the porch. The air was sharp, carrying the smell of wet leaves. The quiet was heavy, too heavy. Then I caught movement on Mrs. Carver's lawn, a tall figure, phone light flicking on and off, circling like a scavenger. The next morning, Mrs. Carver herself knocked on my door, a steaming mug in her hand and worry in her eyes. She's 71, widow of a Navy man, the kind who notices everything. "Michael," she said, "you ought to see this." On her tablet, ring footage replayed 1:12 a.m. Trent Marshall, my daughter's boyfriend, skulking along my driveway, tugging at the side gate, peering through windows. He crouched by my garage keypad for a good 30 seconds, his breath fogging in the cold, before slinking away. I felt hunted in my own home. I scrolled back on the footage. November 9th, November 12th. Same hour, same figure. Always Trent, always circling. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, logbook open, like I was back on base. November 18th, 2025. Suspected intrusion, 1:12 a.m. Trent Marshall. I underlined it twice. When I called Emily the next day, she brushed it off. "Dad, Trent was probably just dropping something off. Don't twist things. This is exactly why you need help." Help. That word again. To her it meant therapy. To me it meant someone had already started stripping my life down piece by piece. I looked around my kitchen, the VA letter framed by the fridge magnet dated 2009, fitness for deployment. Sergeant Michael Hale, no impairment. My wife's photo smiling from the windowsill, the same smile I clung to during my longest deployments. The house we bought in 1992. The mortgage burned clean by 2010. Equity $312,400. My only true retirement. I suddenly understood. Emily wasn't worried about me. She was drowning in debt, $40,000 on credit cards. I'd later learn, and she and Trent had their eyes on this house like vultures on a carcass. That night, lying awake, I realized betrayal wasn't a stab wound. It was a slow suffocation, and my daughter had just placed the pillow over my face. So I ironed my shirt again the next morning. Creased it sharp. The iron hissed, steam curling up like smoke from a battlefield. I wrote the date on the cuff, because I knew the days ahead would test me like combat never had, a battle not for land but for legacy. And I swore they'd find me harder to bury alive than they ever imagined. By the morning after the bill, the steam from the kettle smelled like metal and old pennies. My hands shook, not from age, but from a tremor I recognized from the field. Fear disguised as focus. I lined my pillbox next to the Richmond Times-Dispatch, Tuesday, November 19th, 2025. I read each label out loud. Lesinopril, 10 milligrams. Morning. I shook 2 tablets into my palm, then slid them back and took one, watching the meniscus of water tremble in the glass. If Emily was going to build a case that I couldn't keep my life straight, I would leave no gap she could pry open. At 10:40 a.m., I buttoned that iron shirt with the creased cuff and drove to the clinic off Grove Avenue for the appointment she set. The front desk smelled like antiseptic and paper. The receptionist had a soft voice. Name? Michael Hale, I said. I didn't schedule this. My daughter did, but I sup him here. She slid a clipboard toward me, consents, releases, HIPAA. I read every line, I initialed every box. I dated my signature November 19th, 25. The pen dug a groove in the paper like I was carving it into wood. Mr. Hale? The voice came from the hallway. Dr. Malcolm Rhodes, older and heavier than in 2009, but the same steady eyes. Back then he'd cleared me to go where it was hottest. I'd wanted to hate him on sight. Instead, what I felt was something close to relief, like seeing a familiar road sign in a storm. Inside his office, the blinds half open to the gray November light, he didn't start with forms. He started with a question. Do you know why you stir here? My daughter thinks I'm slipping, I said. HOA emails, pills, a bill with my name that I didn't authorize. And there's a man circling my house at 1 in the morning. I watched his pen. He didn't race to catch up. He noted, measured. He asked orientation questions, the kind that insult you only if you sip your lying to yourself, date and day of the week. Tuesday, November 19th, 2025. I pointed to my cuff, wrote it this morning. President of the United States, I answered. Then I told him the address of my first apartment with my wife in 92, the bank we used, the box number on our PO. I didn't ramble. I placed facts like sandbags. He leaned back. I remember your file from 2009, he said. Your unit SIP supply discipline was impressive. Discipline is what you do when you sit scared, I said. I sit scared, Doc. Not of dying, of being erased. He didn't smile. He didn't pity me. He asked me to draw a clock, 11:10, and I did, with the 1 and 2 tight together like they were whispering. He asked me to remember a list of words. I repeated them back and then recited them again 5 minutes later without missing one. Finally, he closed his notebook. Michael, he said, you are coherent, oriented, and meticulous. Whatever is happening around you, the cognition I seeing doesn't it match that incompetent. I write my impressions after I review collateral info. I exhaled, but it wasn't victory. It was a blindfold lifted to reveal a deeper minefield. He was fair. That meant he wouldn't sign off on any con. But fairness doesn't stop a freight train that's already rolling. At noon, I stepped out into bite-cold air, the smell of wet oak leaves and exhaust seeping into my shirt. Emily was waiting by the curb, arms crossed over her navy blazer like a substitute teacher about to scold a class. How'd it go? She asked, eyes glittering. I answered his questions, I said. He asked good ones. She set her jaw. We said her just trying to help you, Dad. Help is returning my house key, I said. Her phone vibrated. She glanced down, thumb darting across the screen, then looked up with something practiced pasted on. We shall talk later. Back home, the front door key stuck for a beat before turning. a hesitation like the house itself was deciding whether to let me in. I checked the garage keypad. The green LED flashed 3 times on a bad code I hadn't even entered yet. My codes are not random. They're the birthdays I can't forget. I punched the old one. Nothing. I tried again. Nothing. The LED blinked like a smirk. I felt the collapse in my chest. Not a heart thing, but a story thing. The feeling when the plot leaves you behind and writes you as an extra in your own life. I steadied my breath, went inside, found the manual override, lifted the panel. One wire was loose, not snapped, just loosened and tucked. Sloppy work. The kind done by someone who thinks he'll be back soon. At 2:15 p.m., I called Capital City Locksmith. It's Sitch Hale, I said. Rekey all exterior locks. Today. Earliest window is 4 to 6, the voice said. 4 to 6 it is. At 4:18, a van with a dented bumper rolled into my driveway. The tech's name was Luis Tattooed Forearms. Careful fingers. You got a code pad too? He asked. Garage, I said. He worked while I made coffee that tasted like pennies again. He replaced the deadbolt cylinders, handed me 2 sealed key sets, and gave me a printed invoice. Capital City Locksmith. Work order hash 7432. Date November 19th, 25. Rekey 3 exterior locks plus garage keypad reset. $216. I paid by card. The receipt hit my inbox at 5:02 p.m. I printed it and slid it into my logbook. The paper warm from the machine. Luis wiped his hands. If anyone had an old key, it says useless now, and the keypad sets on a new admin code, dissect share it. Unfit, I said. He glanced at the dark street. You got cameras? Neighbor does, I said. Enough to prove what I know. He nodded like a man who's seen people discover the truth about their own houses at dusk. I slept a little that night, if you can call staring at the ceiling with your hands crossed over your chest sleeping. My wife's photograph on the windowsill caught dim light and made a ghost of her. I whispered. I'm still here, but the truth is I felt hollowed out. Army training tells you where to aim. Betrayal moves the target while you shoot. Wednesday the 20th, I started a new ritual. I took a photo of my pillbox next to the newspaper and my watch, each day's date front and center. If Emily or Trent planned to accuse me of confusion or mixing meds, they'd have to explain why my left hand held a time-stamped image and my right hand held a sealed blister pack with the correct count. It felt pathetic, like auditioning for a role I already owned. Competent man plays competent man, but it was insurance. By Friday, November 22nd, the mailman left a thick envelope from Tidewater Federal Credit Union. My gut clenched. I slid it open. Inside was a packet. Home Equity Line of Credit. Application Acknowledgement. Applicant, Michael Hale, primary co-applicant. And a cover letter thanking me for initiating the application process and listing a target funding date, December 2nd, 2025. My name typed, my address, my house. I hadn't dialed a single number. On the second page, a checklist proof of income, property tax bill, homeowner's insurance declarations page. A sticky note. Please bring IDs, both parties, to closing. Both parties, both. They'd already made space for my signature and a ghost beside it. I sat at the table with that packet and felt it, the implosion. Not anger, something colder. The knowledge that if I blinked too slow, they'd drive a truck through my life. There was even a little map to a branch office on Patterson Avenue circled in blue pen, like someone had already been there asking which desk would be free. I called the customer line. This is Michael Hale. I didn't set authorize this application. The rep sounded like someone who has to smile to keep their job. Mr. Hale, I can see an online application originated from a device associated with your address. Target funding date 12/2. If this is fraudulent, we can place an immediate hold and flag your profile. Place the hold, I said, and mark that no one, not a daughter, not a boyfriend, has authority to act for me. I have no power of attorney on file. She typed, done. You shall receive a fraud alert letter within 5 business days. We shall require in-person verification for any future credit products. I thanked her and hung up, the dial tone humming like a warning. December 2nd wasn't just a date, it was a countdown, and I could hear the ticking in the quiet rooms. I stood, walked to the hall closet, and pulled down the old metal lockbox. Inside lay the things that survived floods: my wife's handwritten recipe card for pecan pie, the deed to the house, my DD 214, and a VA letter dated May 12, 2009. Service member fit for deployment. No cognitive impairment. I pressed the deed flat. Mikhail L. Hale and Sarah A. Hale, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. No one else. No Emily. No Trent. If they wanted my name, they'd have to come through me. That evening, I walked the perimeter with a flashlight. The beam bleaching the fence, the mulch, the keypad. I could almost feel Trent's fingerprints in the air. Hunted, yes, but also hunting. The old training returned like a smell remembered. Diesel and dust in the particular silence before a convoy moves out. I was supposed to fall apart here. I think that's how their story goes. Make me doubt myself, stumble on a step, grab the wrong bottle, forget a date. But collapse, I remembered, is just a phase before formation, like steel cooling into something you can rely on. Back at the kitchen table, I wrote into my logbook. November 22nd, 25. Received HELOC packet listing target funding date 12/02. Placed fraud alert with Tidewater FCU at 3:37 p.m. Spoke with Melissa's employee ID M418. I slipped the letter into a plastic sleeve and underlined December 2nd until the paper almost broke. I looked at my wife's photo and said out loud, "They think I sum soft because I sum alone. They forgot I was trained to run supply lines through chaos." By the time the house settled and the refrigerator kicked on like a sigh, I knew what came next. Discipline, systems, evidence. The only way to stop a rolling freight train is with brakes applied miles before the curve. Thanksgiving was a week away. A perfect family stage. They would bring a smile and a plan. I would bring something better. I closed the lockbox, spun the dial, and felt something click inside me. Not rage, a decision. Tomorrow I stop bleeding and start building. The morning after the HELOC letter, the air in Richmond smelled like wood smoke and cold iron. It was Saturday, November 23rd, 2025, and I woke before dawn with one decision in my chest: stop reacting, start recording. Army discipline isn't about shouting orders. It's about systems. I dug out an unused green logbook from a box in the attic, the same kind we used to track fuel convoys in Afghanistan. On the first page, I wrote in block letters, I incident log, Mike Hale LL. Then I logged every detail I could recall from the last 2 weeks, down to minutes. November 9th, 2025, 1:12 a.m. Ring footage shows Trent Marshall by gate circling house. November 12th, 1:14 a.m. Repeat intrusion. November 18th. Received $2,800 therapy bill unconsented. November 19th. Roads evaluation. Coherent. No impairment. November 19th. Locksmith receipt. Work order #7432. $216. Capital City Locksmith. November 22nd. Tidewater FCU HELOC packet. Fraud alert placed employee Melissa ID M418 3:37 p.m. I underlined every date. I signed the bottom of each page. Then I slipped the logbook into a padded envelope, sealed it, and mailed it to myself certified, so the postmark would be proof if anyone tried to erase my story. By mid-morning, I set up a routine. Every day I photographed my pillbox beside that day's Times Dispatch and my Timex watch. No filters, no edits, just evidence. By 10 a.m. I had 3 new photos already uploaded to a private drive and printed on glossy paper. If they claimed I was mixing pills, I'd bury them in timestamps. At 11:15, I walked across the street with a thermos of coffee and knocked on Mrs. Carver's door. She opened it in her slippers, her hair tied back. "Michael, you look like you've been up since Korea," she said. "Since 5, I admitted. I handed her the thermos. "I need your help. Can you notarize a statement about what you saw on your ring footage?" She didn't hesitate. "Of course. My nephew works at UPS, they notarize. Let's write it. At her kitchen table, the smell of cinnamon rolls in the air, she drafted. On November 9th and November 12th, 2025, I observed footage from my Ring doorbell of a tall male, later identified as Trent Marshall, loitering near the property of Michael Hale, attempting the garage keypad. Time approximately 1:12 a.m. 1:14 a.m. I confirm these details as true to my knowledge. She signed it. We drove to UPS. A notary in a navy vest stamped it with a seal and date November 23rd, 2025. I slid the original into a sleeve in my logbook. My hands stopped trembling for the first time in days. That afternoon, I sat at my laptop and typed Guardianship Exploitation Attorney Richmond, VA. The first few ads promised fast results and protect your legacy. But buried in the results, I found Legal Aid Justice Center, Elder Law Unit. I dialed. A receptionist patched me to a woman named Asha Patel. Her voice was calm, clipped, the kind that doesn't waste syllables. "Tell me why you're calling," she said. I gave her the short version. My daughter filing false therapy claims, a boyfriend circling my property, a HELOC attempt in my name. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I almost laughed. "Proof is all I've got." I listed certified logbook, ring footage, notarized statement, therapy bill, fraud letter in the mail, Rhodes evaluation. There was a pause. Then, good, because here's what they'll try. They'll stage forgetfulness. Mix your meds, get affidavits from neighbors who think you're declining. You counter with receipts, timestamps, notarized logs. The court won't care about feelings. It will care about paper. You understand? I ran Army Supply, I said. Paper is how we win wars. She said she'd bolded take my case pro bono, but warned me. Guardianship petitions move fast. Expect a hearing date within 4 weeks if they file. Thanksgiving is coming. You said it'll be on display. Record every word. Thanksgiving. Just 4 days away. I could see it already, Emily smiling. Trent charming, the table staged, not with turkey, but with an ambush. I needed to be ready. On Sunday, November 24th, I drove to Office Depot and bought a slimline digital recorder, Sony ICD PX 470, $64.99. The receipt went into my logbook, stapled under the date. I tested it at home, reading a paragraph from my wife's recipe card. 3 eggs, half cup brown sugar. The playback was clear. That night, I stood at the window, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I remembered convoy nights in Afghanistan, when you knew the ambush would come at the choke point, the curve in the road. The trick wasn't to panic, it was to plan. So I set my choke point, Thanksgiving. On Monday, November 25th, the therapy clinic sent another envelope, balance due $2,800. I slid it into a sleeve with the first bill. Evidence doesn't need commentary, it just needs stacking. On Tuesday, November 26th, I visited the VFW Hall on Broad Street. My friend Santos, another gray-haired vet, poured me burnt coffee and listened. When I showed him the HELOC letter, he shook his head. "They they're trying to declare you incompetent to get the equity. Classic guardianship scam." I said, "My daughter." He didn't blink. "Then you fight harder." "I know someone in APS, Adult Protective Services," quietly. "Want me to connect you?" "Yes," I said. By Wednesday the 27th, the night before Thanksgiving, I had my kit. Incident log, certified and mailed. Pillbox photos, printed and time-stamped. Notarized statement from Mrs. Carver. Locksmith invoice. Fraud alert note from Tidewater in transit. Digital recorder, tested. I placed everything in the lockbox with the deed and VA fitness letter. Then I taped a note on the inside lid. "If open truth lives here, MH." That evening I stood in the kitchen ironing another shirt, the hiss of steam steady. I imagined Emily across the table, Trent at her side. I imagined the phrases they'd use: care, plan, safety, best interest. And I imagined the moment one of them slipped, said something they didn't mean to, while my recorder blinked red in my pocket. This wasn't set paranoia anymore. It was preparation. As I hung the shirt, the smell of starch sharp in the air, I whispered to my wife Sip's photo on the windowsill. "I won Burrs, let them sell the house. I won Burrs, let them sell you." Thanksgiving would be their performance, but it would be my ambush. Thanksgiving Day in Richmond, November 27th, 2025, arrived cold and gray, the kind of air that makes windows sweat and neighbors' chimneys cough smoke into the sky. My daughter thought it would be a holiday dinner. I knew it was the ambush. At 10 a.m., I ironed the shirt again, creased cuff, date inked inside, November 27th. 25, the hiss of steam filled the kitchen. I slipped the Sony recorder into my breast pocket, pressed record, and spoke, Thanksgiving, 1000 hours. Richmond, Virginia. Present Michael Hale. The red light blinked like a pulse. By 1:30 p.m., the turkey was on the table. Mrs. Carver had brought her cranberry sauce, and my daughter Emily arrived with Trent in tow. He carried a bottle of wine, his tie crooked, his smile too polished. Emily kissed my cheek perfunctorily, her eyes scanning the kitchen like a realtor staging a property. Dad, she said brightly, we wanted to go over some things today about your health, your future. I ladled gravy, steady hands, and replied, Thanksgiving is a fine day for truth. For the first hour, we played at family. Trent carved turkey like he owned the knife. Emily asked Mrs. Carver about her garden, her voice sugar, but I saw their eyes dart to each other. To me, to the folder Emily had slid under her chair. At 3:07 p.m., after pie, Emily reached for it. Dad, she began, her tone shifting to rehearsed concern. We've put together a care plan for you, just to make things easier. I chewed slowly, set my fork down. Read it, I said. She unfolded the document, bullet points. Therapy sessions ongoing, medication oversight, financial co-management to protect assets, home repairs scheduled. Trent leaned forward, interjecting smoothly. We've even spoken with a contractor about pre-listing repairs. Nothing drastic, just fresh paint, updated fixtures. You said get top dollar if... Emily shot him a look, but it was too late. She tried to recover. What Trent means is we start planning ahead, responsibly. But the recorder in my pocket caught it all. Every syllable. I reached under the table and pulled a folder of my own. Funny you mentioned pre-listing repairs, I said. I slid out a printed email, December 1, time-stamped from a contractor's Gmail. Subject, estimate for Hale property repairs prior to listing. Emily's face blanched. Trent's Adam's apple bobbed. And funny you mentioned financial protection. I continued. I placed the Tidewater HELOC letter on the table, the circled date, February 25th, 12, glowing under the overhead light. This application was filed in my name, without my consent. Mrs. Carver leaned forward, her old Navy wife eyes narrowing. Emily? Did you? Emily stammered. We sceptered just trying to help Dad manage. I cut her off, calm. Manage me? Or manage $150,000 in proceeds? Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? And then the slip came. Trent, flustered, muttered. The project HELOC proceeds were supposed to... He froze. Too late. The recorder blinked red. Mrs. Carver gasped. You just said it. I opened my logbook, flipped to the page dated November 22nd, showed them my notes, every incident recorded, every intrusion logged, certified mail copies sealed. I set not senile, I set not incompetent. I set meticulous. Silence stretched. The smell of turkey and cinnamon was thick, suddenly rancid. Emily tried again, voice trembling but stubborn. Dad, you've been paranoid. You missed the HOA email. You confused your meds. I reached into my folder, pulled out glossy photographs, my pillbox next to the Times-Dispatch and my watch. Every day for the past week. Do these look confused to you? Dates, pills, proof. Trent opened his mouth, then shut it. The clink of his fork against his plate was the only sound. Mrs. Carver spoke softly. Emily, I saw Trent at your father's Seps gate. I notarized it. I signed it. Emily Sift's face flushed crimson. You don't understand. At that moment, a knock rattled the front door. 2 uniformed Richmond police officers stood in the porch light. Mr. Hale, welfare check. Emily sprang up, hands fluttering. Officers, thank God, you see what I've been dealing with? He seems unstable. But I was already ready. Calm as briefing a convoy, I handed over my logbook, my notarized statement, my receipts. Gentlemen, this is a false report. Here are certified records. Here Sips's ring footage of Trent trespassing. Here are notarized witness statements. The taller officer flipped through, nodding. Everything documented. You look fine to me, sir. The shorter officer said, Mr. Hale, you got more paperwork here than our precinct files. Emily sputtered. But his memory. The taller officer cut her off. May Sippen, this isn't set incompetence. This is documentation. We set are leaving. They tipped their caps and walked out. The silence afterward was thicker than the smoke from the turkey. Emily stared at me, lips trembling, eyes wet. Trent looked down at his plate like a boy caught stealing lunch money. I leaned back, my voice steady, almost quiet. You tried to bury me with paper. You forgot I was trained to live by it. Every receipt, every date, every detail. Mrs. Carver whispered. Michael, they wanted you declared incompetent. I nodded once. Emily grabbed her folder, stuffed the papers inside, and bolted for the door. Trent followed like a shadow. The sound of their car starting cut through the night, and then it was just me, Mrs. Carver, and the recorder's red light still blinking. I reached up, pressed stop, and held the device in my palm like a medal. Inside it, captured forever, was Trent Sip's slip. Project HELOC proceeds, $150,000. That night, I wrote in my logbook. Thanksgiving ambush attempted. Evidence secured. Officers confirmed competence. I underlined it 3 times. Because Thanksgiving wasn't their victory feast. It was my first strike. December rolled into Richmond like a blade across glass, cold, sharp, final. On December 2nd, 2025, I woke before dawn, brewed bitter coffee, and opened my laptop. My inbox glared back with a subject line that could have been a death sentence. HELOC application. Funding status update. I clicked. The message from Tidewater FCU was curt. Application review completed. Target funding date December 2nd. Suspended pending verification due to fraud alert. Suspended. Fraud alert confirmed. My name was no longer a pawn in their hands. I printed the email, underlined the words, and slid the page into my logbook. Then I whispered to my wife Sep's photo. They missed the train, but I knew Emily and Trent weren't the kind to walk away. Not when they were already in too deep. That afternoon I met with Santos at the VFW. He handed me a manila folder, the edges smudged from handling, inside screenshots. Bank records, phone photos. Private investigator owed me a favor, Santos said. Took a look at Trent. The first page made my jaw tighten. November 29th, 2025. Zelle transfer $1,900. Returned NSF insufficient funds. Bounced payment. His bank had flagged excessive utilization in the notes. Another sheet showed late notices from a credit card in his name. The PSF's handwritten summary read, Trent Marshall, significant liquidity issues, pattern of late payments, seeking high-value real estate deals, risk profile, severe. On the last page, stapled, was an email forwarded from Emily Sepp's account. Subject pre-listing repairs, Hale property. Date December 1st, 2025. Addressed to a contractor. Attached estimate for painting, patching, fixture updates. They hadn't just thought about it, they'd scheduled it. I slipped the file into my lockbox alongside the Tidewater letter, offense and defense, lined up like artillery. The next morning, December 3rd, my mailbox clanged with a cream-colored envelope from the clinic. This one wasn't a bill, it was a memo. From Malcolm Rhodes, Ph.D., to case file Michael Hale. Date December 2nd, 2025. Subject evaluation summary. Patient exhibits no signs of incompetency or cognitive decline. Orientation intact. Judgment sound. Recommendation: no guardianship or competency concerns. Patient retains full decision-making capacity. My old Army psychologist had written the one sentence Emily could never erase: no incompetency. I pressed the memo flat against the kitchen counter. The smell of ink sharp. Then I slid it into the lockbox. Next to the deed, next to the VA letter from 2009. One doctor had cleared me for combat then. The same doctor had cleared me for competence now. Full circle. By December 4th, my strategy shifted. No more waiting for their next move. Now I'd set the board. I bought a stack of bankers' folders, labeled each one with block letters: bank fraud, contractors. Locks, medication, witness, clinical. Every piece of evidence, sleeved and indexed. That night, I placed the lockbox on the kitchen table. The metal was cold, the hinge stiff. Inside it lay my arsenal. Fraud alert letter. Lock suspension notice. Bounced Zelle screenshots. Contractor email dated Dec 1. Road septum memo Dec 2. VA fitness letter 2009. Notarized statement from Mrs. Carver. Police welfare check report from Thanksgiving. Pillbox photographs. Locksmith receipt, November 19th. I locked it, spun the dial, and whispered, "Truth lives here." On December 5th, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Dad, can we talk? This is getting out of hand." I didn't reply. Instead, I photographed the screen, time-stamped it, and slid the print into communications folder. On December 6th, Trent tried calling. I let it ring, then listened to the voicemail. "Mike, listen, we just wanted what Sep's best for you. Don't Seps make this harder than it has to be." I recorded the audio onto a CD, labeled it in black Sharpie TRVM June 25th, 12. By December 7th, the pattern was clear. They were desperate. They wanted me to blink. But every blink was another receipt in my logbook. On December 8th, Asha Patel called from legal aid. Her voice was brisk. "Michael, ISEF received preliminary filings. Emily is moving toward a guardianship petition. We SELT likely have a hearing date soon. When that happens, you SELT need to present everything. Clean, chronological, airtight." "Already done," I said. I could hear her pause, then a faint laugh. "I believe you." On December 9th, I walked into Office Depot again, bought a fireproof document safe. $129.99. Receipt stapled, logged. I placed it in the hall closet, bolted to the studs. If fire or flood came, the lockbox would survive. That evening, I poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and pressed play on the Sony recorder. I heard Emily's smooth pitch about care plans. I heard Trent's slip, his careless phrase, "Project HELOC proceeds, $150,000. My voice followed, calm, steady, proof-rich. It was the soundtrack of betrayal, but also of my defense. On December 10th, Emily tried again. She knocked on the door, her voice sugar through the wood. "Dad, please. Let's just talk. You SIP, you're making yourself the enemy." I didn't open it. Instead, I slid a photograph of the deed under the door. "Mikkel LL and Sarah Hale, no Emily, no Trent. Just the names of the two people who had built this house." I heard her gasp. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. That night I wrote in my logbook, December 10th. Daughter attempted entry. Provided deed photo as reply. No verbal contact. Preserved dignity. By December 11th, the clock was ticking. Asha filed for protective relief, attaching Rhodes' memo under seal. The court acknowledged receipt. A hearing date loomed. I hired another locksmith that day, capital city, same tech, Luis. This time I added window locks, reinforced strike plates. Invoice #7511, dated December 11th, $184.50. Receipt stapled into my logbook. Luis glanced at me when he finished. "Feels like you're fortifying a castle," he said. I nodded. "That SIP's exactly what I SIPs am doing." He didn't ask questions. He just shook my hand, strong and firm. That night, as I double-checked every window and door, I realized something. I wasn't just defending anymore, I was building a record so heavy it could crush their lies in court. By December 12th, my evidence folders bulged. By December 13th, my logbook pages curled from ink. By December 14th, my lockbox was nearly full. And by December 15th, I knew I wasn't the one being tested anymore. By mid-December, Richmond's air was brittle with frost, every breath a reminder that the year was running out, and so was my patience. The fraud alerts had bought me time, but time doesn't stop desperation. On the morning of December 11th, I noticed something wrong. My pillbox, always lined up beside the newspaper, always squared to the edge of the counter, wasn't sitting flush. The Tuesday compartment felt lighter. I opened it. The tablets inside weren't the same shape. I pulled the bottle from the cabinet and poured one into my palm. Different color, different imprint. Someone had tampered with my pills. I didn't panic. Instead, I walked to the hall closet, grabbed the tripod I'd used back when Sarah and I still took family photos, and set up my phone camera. I filmed everything: the pillbox, the mismatched tablets, the newspaper showing the date, December 11th, 2025, and my steady hands laying out the evidence. Then I sealed the odd pills into a Ziploc bag, wrote the date across the plastic with a Sharpie, and slid it into my medication folder. By noon, I drove to CVS, bought fresh blister packs, and filmed myself opening them, narrating like a soldier reporting inventory. Unbroken seal, 12 tablets. Lot number 5, A7Q. Date of purchase, December 11th, 2025, 12:42 p.m. Receipt attached. They wanted me to look confused. Instead, I looked documented. That afternoon, Luis the locksmith returned. Van idling in my driveway, he reinforced strike plates, installed window locks, and reprogrammed the garage pad again. Work order hash 7511, $184.50. Receipt into logbook. Date stamped. When he finished, he stood in the cold, rubbing his hands. Feels like you're locking out more than burglars. I met his eyes. I am. By 5 p.m., the sun was down, and Richmond Sepp streets glowed under Christmas lights. I sat in the kitchen, recorder on, drafting my log. December 11th, medication tampering documented. Video plus bag evidence. Locks reinforced. Witness, Luis, locksmith. At 7:13 p.m. My phone buzzed. Emily Sepp's text. Dad, we set her worried. You set her acting paranoid. None of this is normal. I took a photo of the message, printed it, slid it into communications. Then I texted back just one image. The deed to the house, flat under the kitchen light. Her reply never came. The next morning, December 12th, Asha Patel called. Her voice was clipped, urgent. Michael, they set filed. Petition for guardianship, citing incompetency. Hearing set for December 19th at the Richmond Circuit Court. I wrote it down, underlined it twice. Hearing December 19th, 2025. They shall bring character witnesses, she said. Neighbors, maybe even police, if they can spin it. They shall argue you sep paranoid, unstable. But you have road sesh memo, your logs, and every receipt. We shall counter every point. Just stay calm. Calm is my weapon, I told her. That night, I set up another camera and filmed myself walking the perimeter, shining a flashlight on every window lock, every deadbolt, every reinforced strike plate. Date December 12th, 2025. I narrated, house secured, evidence filed. On December 13th, I received the fraud alert confirmation letter from Tidewater Federal Credit Union. Thick envelope, embossed seal. Inside, application suspended. Identity verification required. Fraud alert placed. Future applications require in-person presence. It was dated December 3rd, but postmarked the 11th. I slid it into bank fraud. That evening I ate dinner alone, grilled cheese, black coffee. Across from me, Sarah Sips's photo caught the lamplight. I spoke to her out loud. They think they can put me on trial. They forgot I know how to survive trials. On December 14th, a Sunday, the church bells rang down the street. I sat at my desk compiling every piece of evidence into a binder. Tab 1. Incident log, certified mail copy. Tab 2. Ring footage screenshots. Tab 3. Notarized Carver statement. Tab 4. Locksmith invoices. Tab 5. Fraud alert letters. Tab 6. Road Seps memo. Tab 7, Thanksgiving audio transcript. Tab 8, medication tampering video screenshots. I labeled the binder spine, Hail Veves fraud. Court hearing December 19th, 2025. By December 15th, my living room looked like a command post, folders stacked, recorder charging, evidence staged. Emily hadn't contacted me since the deed photo. Trent had gone silent. That was louder than any voicemail. On December 16th, Santos called. APS opened a preliminary case file. They said I'll observe your hearing, keep everything clean. Clean is all ISEF got, I said. December 17th, Asha filed a motion for protective relief. She attached Rhodes' memo under seal, stamped by the clerk. That paper was a shield thicker than Kevlar. On December 18th, the night before the hearing, I sat by the window, the house humming with heat, snow flurries dusting the street outside. I placed lilies, Sarah's favorite, on the table, fresh from the florist, a silent promise that she'd be with me in court. I recorded one last log entry, December 18th, 2025. Ready for hearing. Binder complete. Recorder charged, evidence intact. Objective, prove competence, expose fraud. Location: Richmond Circuit Court, December 19th, 10 a.m. I closed the logbook, set my alarm, and whispered into the dark. They called me paranoid. Tomorrow the court will call me prepared. December 19th, 2025. Richmond Circuit Court. The morning air was brittle, ice in every breath. I wore my creased shirt, the date written inside the cuff. December 19th, 25. I tucked my logbook into a leather satchel binder labeled Hail VSS Fraud under my arm. The lilies Sarah loved sat in the passenger seat of my truck, their scent sharp, almost defiant. By 9:15 a.m., the courthouse steps were slick with frost. Emily stood near the doors with Trent, both dressed in navy, their postures stiff with rehearsed composure. Emily wouldn't meet my eyes. Trent did, and his smirk cracked when he saw the binder in my hand. Inside, the courtroom smelled of varnished wood and old paper. Judge Catherine Morgan presided, silver hair pulled tight, glasses perched low. Asha Patel slid beside me at the defense table, her files neatly stacked. Across the aisle, Emily and Trent sat with their attorney, a polished man named Fisher. At 10 o'clock sharp, the bailiff called the case. In re-guardianship of Michael L. Hale. Emily rose, voice quivering but confident. Your Honor, my father has shown repeated lapses, missing HOA emails, confusing medication, paranoia about people entering his home. We are concerned for his safety and finances. We request guardianship authority to ensure his well-being. Fisher leaned in, amplifying the petitioner has observed instability, forgetfulness, and susceptibility to exploitation. She seeks only to protect her father's sepsis and health. Judge Morgan nodded, eyes cool. Mr. Hale, through counsel? Asha stood. Her tone was precise. No wasted words. Your Honor, the petition is a calculated attempt to seize control of Mr. Hale's $312,400 equity home and pension. We will present evidence of fraudulent Haylock applications, contractor emails, and financial distress by the petitioners. And we will demonstrate Mr. Hale's full competence through documentation and expert testimony. The judge motioned, proceed. Asha began with the binder. Exhibit A, Incident Log, maintained daily, certified, mailed November 23rd. Note the handwriting, dates, signatures. She placed it on the evidence table. Fisher tried to interject. Handwritten logs aren't dissed, but Asha cut him. The logbook cross-references notarized statements, receipts, and bank letters. It is corroborated, not standalone. Next came Exhibit B, ring footage screenshots. Mrs. Carver, small but unshaken, testified. Yes, that sips Trent Marshall at 1:12 a.m., November 9th and 12, tugging the garage keypad. Trent squirmed. His attorney objected, speculative identification, but the timestamp and his own height in comparison to the fence made speculation thin. Exhibit C, Thanksgiving audio. Isha pressed play. Emily Sepp's voice filled the courtroom. We Sepps put together a care plan, then Trent Sepp's slip, Project HELOC proceeds. $150,000. The room went still. Emily's face flushed crimson. Trent's lawyer leaned into his ear, whispering furiously. The judge raised an eyebrow. Did I hear correctly? HELOC proceeds? Asha nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Immediately after, a fraudulent HELOC attempt was made in Mr. Hale's name. Exhibit D. Tidewater FCU Fraud Alert Letter, December 3rd. She handed it up. The embossed seal glinted under fluorescent lights. Judge Morgan skimmed it, lips tight. Exhibit E. Contractor email, December 1st, subject line. Tadstipple for Hale property repairs prior to listing. ESPA obtained through private investigation, originating from Emily Hale Sepet's email account. Gasps rippled through the benches. Emily stammered, That was just a hypothetical. The judge held up a hand. You shall have your turn, Miss Hale. Asha continued. Calm as steel. Exhibit Footroad Sips Memorandum. December 2nd, stating Setbit patient exhibits no incompetency. Setbit we call Dr. Malcolm Rhodes to testify. The bailiff opened the door. Rhodes entered, taller than I remembered, wearing a gray suit, his army bearing still in his shoulders. He took the oath, then faced the court. I evaluated Sergeant Michael Hale in 2009 for combat readiness. At that time, he demonstrated clarity, judgment, and resilience. I evaluated him again on November 19, 2025. He was fully oriented, cognitively intact, and meticulous. In my professional opinion, there is no basis for incompetency. Depulio Fisher tried to discredit. Doctor, isn't it possible he presented well for an hour but declines at home? Rhodes didn't blink. I don't set base findings on possibility. I base them on evidence. His documentation supports my evaluation. He is competent. The courtroom gasped. Emily Sipp's voice cracked. But he missed an HOA email. He mixed his meds. Sasha rose. Exhibit G. Photographs of Mr. Hale Sipp's pillbox, dated daily beside newspapers, showing correct medication management. Exhibit T. Police Welfare Check Report. November 27th. Officers found him competent and calm. Petitioner Sipp's concerns are contradicted by evidence. Judge Morgan turned to the police officers seated in the back. The taller officer stood. Yes, ma Stam. Mr. Hale had logs, recordings, no impairment noted. The shorter officer added, He was more organized than our case files. Laughter rippled, quickly hushed. Finally, Asha set down the last folder. Your Honor, this is not protection. It is exploitation. They attempted fraud, they staged welfare checks, and they tampered with medication. Mr. Hale has not lost competence. He has lost trust in his own daughter. The silence afterward was heavier than the wood panels. Judge Morgan leaned back. Her gaze cut to Emily. Do you deny the HELOC attempt? Emily Sipp's lips trembled. I thought it was the only way. I Sipp's drowning in debt. Trent hissed, Emily, but it was too late. Her voice carried across the courtroom like a confession. The Judge Sipp's gavel cracked once. Enough. This court will not serve as an ATM for your poor decisions. She turned to me. Mr. Hale, do you wish to make a statement? I stood, buttoned my jacket, my voice steady. Your Honor, I served this country. I raised my daughter alone after her mother died. I kept every receipt, every log, because I knew details outlast lies. I sept not crazy, I sept betrayed, and I will not be erased. The judge nodded once, then spoke. This court issues an immediate injunction, no power of attorney changes. No financial actions without Mr. Hale Sipp's consent. Petition for guardianship denied pending final ruling December 23rd. Her gavel struck. The sound echoed like a gunshot in a canyon. Emily collapsed into her chair, face in her hands. Trent muttered something about appeals, but his voice was swallowed by the scrape of benches as people stood. Rhodes touched my shoulder as he left. Sergeant, he said quietly, supply lines held, you held. I exhaled, the first full breath in weeks. The lilies on the bench beside me filled the air with their sharp sweetness. Sarah was there, silent, but present. As I walked out into the cold December air, reporters murmured, neighbors whispered, and Emily refused to look at me. Trent's smirk was gone, replaced by a shadow of fear. The showdown was done. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The cold December wind cut sharper after the hearing, but I walked out of that courthouse with my back straight. The injunction had landed like a wall of steel between me and Emily's scheme. For the first time in weeks, I felt more than just hunted. I felt defended. Still, battles leave echoes. By December 20th, word had spread. Neighbors whispered, texts trickled in, and even at the VFW, men clapped me on the back, saying, "Heard you showed 'em." But with each nod, I felt the weight of what had really happened. My daughter had tried to erase me. Public now. Permanent. Santos called me that Saturday. APS has officially opened a file, he said. Adult Protective Services. They settle investigate the guardianship attempt and the financial exploitation. It settles no longer just you against them, Mike. The state settles watching now. I jotted it into my logbook, December 20th, 2025. APS case file opened. Monitor ongoing. I underlined it twice. That evening, I found a package on my porch. A florist's box wrapped in green paper, inside white lilies. No card, no signature, just lilies. Sarah's favorite. I knew Emily hadn't sent them. She wouldn't dare. I carried them inside, set them in a vase, and whispered, "You're still here, Sarah. You're still with me." On December 21st, Rhodes called. His voice was gravel but steady. "Sergeant Hale, you did what you always did, kept the line clear. Now keep doing it. Court battles are like convoys. Even after you clear an ambush, you stay alert. Understood?" "Understood," I said. He chuckled low. "You taught me once that truth lives in receipts. Remember that." By December 22nd, the eve of the final ruling, the house was quiet, the evidence folders stacked like sentries on the table. I set the lilies beside them, their scent filling the room. Each petal felt like a witness. Sarah would be there in spirit, and I'd carry her memory into court like a shield. That night, I wrote in my logbook, December 22nd, 2025, eve of ruling, APS monitoring. Lilies received, Rhodes advised vigilance. Prepared for final judgment. I closed the book, turned the lock on the safe, and walked the perimeter one last time. Frost glimmered on the locks Louise had reinforced, every window secured. I stood at the edge of the yard, the bay window glowing behind me, and felt something I hadn't felt since this all began. The calm that comes before victory, not defeat. The war wasn't finished. But the battle lines had shifted. The next day, the gavel would fall again. And this time, it wouldn't just protect me, it would expose them. December 23rd, 2025. Richmond Circuit Court. The sky that morning was white with snow, the streets muffled and slow. I carried the lilies in one hand and my binder in the other, each step crunching against the frost. It felt like walking into a final battle, not with weapons but with truth stacked in folders. Inside, the courtroom was quieter than before. No crowd, no whispers, just the echo of boots on tile. Emily sat pale at the petitioner's table, her attorney whispering frantically. Trent wasn't beside her this time. He hadn't shown. Judge Morgan entered, gavel in hand. We reconvened for final ruling in the matter of guardianship of Michael L. Hale. Emily stood, voice thin. "Your Honor, I only wanted to protect my father. If mistakes were made, they were made out of love." A Shah rose beside me, calm, sharp. "Your Honor, love does not forge signatures on loans. Love does not tamper with pills. Love does not stage welfare checks to seize $312,400 in equity. That is exploitation. And the record shows it." The judge adjusted her glasses. "The court has reviewed all evidence, logbooks, fraud alerts, witness testimony, Rhodes' memo, financial documents, audio recordings. Petitioners have not rebutted this evidence." Therefore, she raised her voice slightly. "Each word clear, the petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice." The gavel struck once. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. But the judge wasn't finished. Further, the court finds substantial concern regarding fraudulent financial actions. This matter will be referred to Adult Protective Services and to the Virginia Real Estate Board regarding Miss Hale's license. Additionally, the Virginia Bureau of Financial Institutions will be notified concerning Mr. Marshall's mortgage broker license. The room froze. Emily's career, her lifeline hung by a thread, and Trent, though absent, was now branded in absentia. The judge continued. Protective order is extended for 180 days. No financial transactions, property sales, or applications may be made in Mr. Hale Sips's name without his direct consent in court. Court adjourned. The gavel cracked again, final and hard. It was over. Emily crumpled into her chair, shoulders shaking. Her attorney placed a hand on her arm, but she shook it off, her face buried. I stood. My knees didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I gathered my binder, tucked the lilies under my arm, and walked out with the same calm I'd carried through convoys overseas. Outside, snow fell steady, covering the courthouse steps. I set the lilies down in the whiteness, petals bright against the gray stone, Sarah's flowers placed where justice had been done. Neighbors who had come quietly to watch nodded as I passed. Santos clapped me on the shoulder. Rhodes caught my eye, gave a sharp salute. Emily didn't follow me out. I didn't look back. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck, exhaled fog against the windshield, and whispered to Sarah, "We kept the house." The engine hummed, the snow thickened, and for the first time in weeks I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a man who had defended his name, his home, his legacy. The war was over, and the truth had won. December 23rd, 2025. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. Snow clung to the bay window, muting the street outside. I sat at the kitchen table with my logbook open, pen poised, and wrote the last entry, December 23rd, 2025. Kept the house. Petition denied with prejudice. APS Plus licensing boards notified. Protective order extended 180 days. I underlined it twice, signed my name, and closed the book. For weeks, my life had been turned into evidence, every pill photo, every receipt, every notarized page. I had lived like a man on trial in his own home, and now, with the gavel struck and justice delivered, I felt the release, not triumph, not gloating, just relief. I poured a glass of water and stared at Sarah Sip's photo on the windowsill. "We did it," I whispered. "We kept the legacy." The phone rang. It was Rhodes. "Sergeant Hale," he said, voice steady. "Doctor," I replied. "You did the work," he said simply. "All I did was confirm it. You kept supply lines running in Afghanistan. You kept them running here. Boundaries, documentation, discipline. That Sip's what saved you." I nodded, though he couldn't see. "Funny thing," I said. "In war, I thought boundaries were fences and checkpoints. Turns out at home, they just lines you draw with family. And sometimes you've got to enforce them the same way." He was quiet a moment. "Then love without boundaries is just access. Remember that, Sergeant." His words landed heavy but true. After we hung up, I walked to the hall closet and reset the garage code one final time. This time, I didn't write it down. This time, I didn't share it. I stood in the quiet kitchen, the lilies' scent faint but steady. I realized revenge hadn't been about crushing Emily. It had been about drawing a line she couldn't cross again, about keeping Sarah's memory untarnished, about proving to myself and to the world that I was still the man I had always been, competent, clear, unshaken. Before heading to bed, I opened the lockbox one more time. Inside lay my arsenal: Rhodes' memo, the HELOC fraud letter, the contractor email, the Thanksgiving audio transcript. I touched each file lightly, like a soldier patting gear before a mission. Then I locked it, spun the dial, and whispered, "Legacy, not loot." The snow outside kept falling, blanketing Richmond in silence. And I felt for the first time in a long time not hunted, not betrayed, just whole. The days after the ruling felt strange. Richmond streets still wore their coat of snow, but inside my house the air felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I ate breakfast without setting up a camera, without photographing a pillbox next to the morning paper. Still, I kept the logbook nearby. Habit was survival, and survival had carried me this far. On December 27th, a letter arrived from APS. I slit it open with my pocket knife, the blade catching on thick paper. Case review conducted. No evidence of neglect or incompetency found. Guardianship petition denied with prejudice. Monitoring of potential exploitation by petitioners ongoing. I underlined the line, no evidence of incompetency. My logbook had become an official record. My truth now carried the seal of the state. That evening my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Dad," I said, "I'm sorry. I didn't set a mean for it to go this far." I stared at the screen a long time. Then I replied with 3 words, "I am safe." And after a pause, I added, "Boundaries stay." She never wrote back. On December 29th, Dusha called. "Mr. Hale, I wanted you to hear it from me." The court forwarded findings to the licensing boards. Emily Sips's realtor license is under formal review. Trent Seps's mortgage broker license too. That process may take months, but I don't expect either of them to come out clean. Her tone was professional, but her words carried a weight of closure. They hadn't just failed to take my home, they had burned their own futures, trying. I thanked her. She hesitated before hanging up. "You did everything right, Michael." Don't forget that. On New Year's Eve, while fireworks cracked faintly in the distance, I sat at the kitchen table with my lockbox open. The evidence still lay inside, each folder bulging with receipts and reports. But I realized something. This war wasn't just about defense, it was about legacy. So on January 2nd, 2026, I drove downtown to a local trust office. A clerk with rimmed glasses guided me through the forms. By afternoon it was done. I had created the Sarah A. Hale Memorial Trust. The deed to the house, the equity, even my pension, all locked into a trust bearing her name. It could never be seized, never mortgaged, never stripped by anyone again. When I got home, I wrote in my logbook, January 2nd, 2026. House secured into trust. Legacy protected. Sarah Sip's name honored. That night, I sat in the living room, the glow from the bay windows spilling onto the snow. I didn't feel like prey anymore. I didn't even feel like a survivor. I felt like a man who had won by outlasting lies with discipline, by proving that truth lives in details. Emily might never forgive me. Trent might disappear into another scheme. APS might continue their watch. But my house was safe. My legacy was safe. And I was safe. The war was finished. By late January 2026, Richmond thawed. Snow melted into gutters and the air smelled of wet asphalt and wood smoke. Life settled back into its quiet rhythms. But betrayal leaves shadows. I saw mine in little ways when the mail arrived, when a branch tapped my window at night, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. On February 2nd, an email alert pinged from a real estate listing site. I opened it. New property listed by Hale Realty. My chest tightened. Emily's name sat in bold, attached to a small condo on the other side of town. She hadn't disappeared. She'd pivoted. Selling someone else's property now, as if the courtroom never happened. But beneath her name was a line, pending license review by Virginia Real Estate Board. The irony bit sharp. She could list all she wanted, but every keystroke was under scrutiny. Trent, on the other hand, vanished. His phone disconnected. His email bounced back. Word from Santos was that he'd skipped town, whispers of creditors chasing him. A man who built schemes on sand, washed away by the tide. Then, on February 5th, an envelope arrived. No return address, but inside was a photo. My old unit, dusty uniforms, sunburnt faces, grinning at a base in Kandahar. On the back, scrawled in firm handwriting, "Fitness is not a test, it's set as a habit. Rhodes." I sat at the kitchen table, photo in one hand, Sarah's picture in the other. Between them lay the trust papers, the deed, the logbook, past, present, and future, stitched together by lines of ink and memory. The next morning, before dawn, I walked the neighborhood. The bay window of my house glowed behind me, warm against the dark. Each step on the frozen sidewalk felt deliberate, final. I didn't carry folders, didn't recite dates. I didn't need to. Because the real revenge wasn't just the ruling. It wasn't APS watching Emily or Trent running broke. It was the record I had built, every page, every receipt, every photo. A record that outlived their lies. I paused under the street lamp, the air cold on my breath, and spoke aloud just for Sarah and the silence. You didn't lose me. You gave me away when you priced me. The light flickered, the world stayed still, and I turned back toward my house, my fortress, my legacy, my proof.